live with our first panel, and that's this session with the one from Dick Dunkel before this is a tough one to follow, right? But what better way to do it with a strong panel? And today we have David O'Malley from Numerated, Jessica Norwood from Cisco, and Pat McDonough from Crowdstrike. So it's a very strong lineup. I'm very excited to get into this, and it's a true privilege to be here today and to be able to run this panel. So thanks for joining us. We're gonna dive straight into it, and let's get Jessica onto the stage first to introduce herself. I think she's with us in just. Oh, there you are. Great to see you.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me. My name is Jessica Norwood. By day, I lead the digital sales content strategy for Cisco in global virtual sales and engineering. By night, I am a children's book author and podcast host, and full-time wife and full-time mother of 2 little ones. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, a lot of good things that you're doing there, right? And I do like the Sugar Daddy podcast is what it's called, right?
Yeah, the Sugar Daddy podcast, his and hers perspective on financial wellness and freedom. So my husband is a financial planner, so he gives his expertise and I just give my opinions. It's a lot of fun.
So I'll have the team to look up a link so that they can share it with our audience today. I've heard one episode. I think it's great. So yeah, definitely keep on doing that as well. Then I'm looking to get Patrick onto the stage as well to seeing if his setup is working now. I know that we had a little bit of a challenge there. Oh, he's not here yet. That's fine. We'll get him in a second. We'll move over to David for introductions here. There he is, David. Can you hear us okay? Is it all working for you? There he is. Yeah.
There we go. So, well, great. Well, hey, listen, first of all, congratulations on what looks to be a fantastic event, Pim and team. And I can tell you that it's a lot of fun to do these events, and it's awfully exciting to see just how well attended this is. So thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the content today. My name is David O'Malley. I am a customer, obviously a very happy customer. And I am the president of a company called Numerated. We are a fast growth startup about 7 years old in the greater Boston area where we're headquartered in the States. My background, this is my 30th year in industry. I started out as a banker with Citigroup in New York City, and then moved on into the tech world in the late 90s. And I had the privilege of working for companies such as Fidelity Information Services, which is the world's largest pure play financial services technology company out of Jacksonville, Florida. Fiserv, who's also a very well-known household name in the financial services space. Oracle, where I was the GM that looked after a 43 country business for them, running financial services there. That was banking, insurance, and capital markets. And then SAP, where I was the president of financial services for SAP out of New York City. And then later ran a company in Europe called Octo Telematics. So if you have some of your guests from the EMEA region, you might be familiar with Octo. It was the largest connected car company in the world with over 6 million connected vehicles. And it was a really fantastic opportunity to work for a European-based company and live and operate out of the UK as well as Rome, Italy. So I come to you today from a company that has about 75 employees. So I've had the privilege of working for companies and running divisions of multi-billion-dollar businesses and thousands of employees, as well as putting on the lens of looking at some of these same challenges we're going to talk about today through the eyes of a startup or a fast growth company. And so hopefully I'll be able to share a couple of anecdotes and stories from the journey. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to come in and share a little bit of our experience with you and your team.
Yeah, absolutely, David, and thank you for doing this. Right in the chat, actually, there's already some Boston love showing that when you brought it up, and the EMEA people as well. Like, absolutely, the audience today is geographically very well spread, so definitely resonating with everything that you said there, and people are talking about the incredible background and journey that you've already had. So it's really great to have you in this panel with us today. I do believe that in the meanwhile, and I'm just looking to the team here, whether Patrick got onto the session as well. Oh, there he is. I see him entering the stage. It's Patrick, are you with us? Yeah, there you are. Great to see you, man.
Some internet issues. Apologies, Pim.
Yeah, can you please introduce yourself to our audience here today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hello, everybody. Pat McDonough. Sorry for being late. I am Director of Sales Productivity over at Crowdstrike. My background is pretty diverse in terms of sales and sales leadership. I got my career started at a company called Invaluable and stepped into sales leadership there. I then moved to a company called Fuse, which was a really big MEDDICC shop, where I led business development and eventually took a leadership role on the channel. And now my current role is sales productivity at Crowdstrike, which is a bit of a departure from what I've done in the past, but it combines a lot of things that I've liked about some of my past roles. So there's a lot of strategy, there's an analytical component where we're trying to constantly figure out where gaps or challenges or areas of opportunity are in the business and trying to figure out what the fix is and implement. And there's also a lot of coaching. So given kind of some of my experience, been a good opportunity for me to leverage that in this role. What else? I'm based in Boston, and we've been working with the MEDDICC team now for a handful of months. It feels like longer, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like Boston is well represented, guys, and yeah, truly appreciate the partnership here. And hey, for the session, right? The chat is open. Questions are welcome. We did reserve some time at the end to answer questions, but feel free to post them throughout. If there's a good opportunity to bring it into the session, we'll do so. And yeah, I mean, let's get into it. The first thing that we really want to get into with this panel is why your organization decided to adopt MEDDPICC or a variation of MEDDICC in the first place, right? And that's not to say that there wasn't like some MEDDICC going on before, but it's more to say with regards to like a broader initiative and really taking it from where it was to where you envision it to be, right? So with that question, I would want to go to Jessica to begin with to talk a little bit about why Cisco and the specific part of Cisco that you work with decided to do this and enter this journey, if you will.
Absolutely. It's a great question. And Cisco is uniquely placed. So in my role in global virtual sales and engineering, we only service digital sellers. So there's about 1,200 of them across the globe, APJ, EMEA, and the Americas. And Cisco's been an industry leader for a long time, right? But the market is changing, and the way the buyer journey has evolved has changed over time, right? Everything is much more digital. People don't really need to meet in person. Budgets are constrained. So the people who like to meet in person maybe don't have budget to do that anymore. And so we've really had to pivot and change. I think because of the enormous and really fast growth that Cisco's had over the last 40 plus years, things were working really well without a designated process in place. And so if you look at our business unit, Global Virtual Sales and Engineering, and you talk to 20 different sellers across the globe, 20 different leaders across the globe, and you ask them what their process is to get from discovery conversation to closed won business, they're all going to give you a different answer. And so right now we're really in a pivotal state where we need to standardize that process. Our big thing is 80% standardization, 20%, creativity, flexibility for those cultural nuances that, of course, we need to keep in mind. All accounts are not created equal, but we have to make sure that there is a process in place and that from team to team, from country to country, there is an expectation set for how you move a deal through the pipe. And so that's really what we're focusing on right now. And MEDDPICC is great. Obviously, it's an industry standard. We are doing the P and the double C at the end, so full MEDDPICC. And for us, the P could be paper process and or partner because we do sell through the channel pretty heavily. And so again, we want to accommodate for those nuances whenever they are necessary within the deal. But buyers are changing and we need to adapt, and now is the time to do it. So we're really excited to be jumping in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely love that. And I know a little bit about all the perspective that you gave there, being with Cisco myself before, right? So it's great to see the whole organization that you are part of leveling up by way of utilizing the framework. And I think a great example, going back to Andy's initial session, where it's open source, right? You should be able to use this to the best of the ability specifically for your organization. And I think an interesting thing here, like Cisco, like who doesn't know Cisco, right? It's massive. It's like there are a ton of solutions going on there. But I think with this panel in specific, it's interesting to see the different perspectives. So I'm going to David, who has, as we know from his experience that he just shared, has seen it in organizations as big as Cisco, but right now is in a different place. How did sort of the deciding to adopt MEDDPICC look like for you and for the Numerated team, David?
Well, I'm excited about the opportunity for us to take a process and a qualification tool like what MEDDPICC provides for and bring it into an organization like ours at the time we did. And let me explain what I mean by that. The groups that we have mostly focused on are some of the obvious ones: sales, account management, solution engineering. But we've broadened it to include marketing, product marketing, and even parts of product development. And by doing so, it really created a new framework for the entire company. And you can do that when you're small. So full disclosure, small company, you can do that. And you can do it in a way that's rapid and it can be adopted quickly. And by doing so, though, it sort of forced everyone to really get on the same page about a lot of things. And when you're a fast growth startup, so our journey went from the usual triple, triple, double, double, double every year in size, but we had an interruption during the journey. We had 2 years, at least in the States, with the CARES Act, with what was called PPP, which was the Payroll Protection Program launched post-COVID. And that was designed to bring loans to small businesses. What we do at the core of our business is we sell software that is small business lending software. So it was very good timing, very good opportunity. But what it did was it caused a massive spike in the size of our business almost overnight, virtually overnight. We went from, we're talking about a company doing $2 to $3 million a year in revenues to $46 million in revenues. And so it's a massive change. And what happens is you drop everything, you lose sight of everything you thought you knew, and you just run at and focus on that thing in front of you. On the back side of that, it was very perishable revenue. On the back side of that, you still have a business to run, your core business. And so lots of those other functional groups lost track of maybe some of the things that we had originally set out to do. And so by implementing MEDDPICC, and what we did this year by bringing all of our functional teams in under the tent, was we forced ourselves to stare at the M1s and the M2s in particular, really anchor on those key metrics that we use to measure what success or what great looks like. And that helped to kind of reopen the conversation across the board. And that forced focus. And that was super important for us after that meteoric rise and then coming back down to sort of what we call normal again, the kind of normal run rate growth business. It was a really important forcing function for us. So MEDDPICC went so far beyond our wildest imaginations because it helped us knit together the entire organization. And so when we brought it in, our initial hope was we'd get the sales force a little more focused on qualifying. What we learned very quickly was it was a rallying point for the entire organization and a chance for us to stop, catch our breath, focus, agree, and move forward. And it's been a fantastic opportunity for everybody here at Numerated.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that the first MEDDICON 1 is where we sort of shared the customer lifecycle framework from a MEDDPICC perspective for the first time, right? So this is where you cross-functionally adopt MEDDPICC. And an easy example of that is like marketing involved to utilize the M1, so the quantifiable and proven value impact that you've already made on current customers and using that towards prospective customers, right? I think that Numerated and your team, David, is one of the first businesses that we've worked with that really have taken that approach and spin that up in the first 6 months of implementation. That's been really cool to see. Going back to the different, say, sizes of the businesses that you are representing, I think, again, what is interesting with this panel is like you have the size of Cisco, you have Numerated where you guys are right now. Crowdstrike is sort of in the middle of that, right? So Pat, I'm very curious to hear from you why your organization decided to double down on MEDDPICC. And I specifically say it like that because it was existing in your organization to a degree already, right? So yeah, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, exactly. We started leaning into MEDDPICC prior to my tenure at Crowdstrike. So I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago. but we really just started to breathe a little bit more oxygen into it over the past couple of quarters. The reason for that being is, I feel like at some points sometimes you reach a certain point where there's a scale of adoption and you're just not really where you need to be. And given some of the things that happened with the economic uncertainty and downturn that we're seeing, it gave us a license to kind of lean into it a little bit more. Because to Jessica's earlier point, what happens when some of the economic times change is buying teams start to expand, decision criteria starts to get a little bit more particular, right? There's internal resources that there's the same amount of projects, but there's smaller budgets for them. So your competition also expands too. And so there's just a lot of different dynamics that happen within MEDDPICC that change. And what you were doing before isn't going to necessarily allow you to win at the same clip that it will now. So for us, we wanted to see what we could do to level set around the methodology and refresh it, but then also take it to the next level, to the point where it was second nature for our sellers. And we're at the point where, they're the ones self-assessing deals. You're in a deal review and the conversation isn't around finding the gaps. It's around, all right, how do we bring in the ecosystem to focus on how to move it forward in the best way possible?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And you're saying things like adoption and level set, right? If we think about this holistically, the way that we typically talk about this, and with you guys as well, is like enablement and getting everybody at the level of being able to speak MEDDPICC as a language. It's a great start, right? But it's only just a start at the same time. And so when you think about adoption and operationalizing, and I even see some questions in the chat about this already, I want to focus a little bit of our time and attention onto that, to hear from you guys how you are thinking about, well, first getting the team trained, but then specifically like the steps after that. Like, how are you supporting the team from like a resource and a systems perspective to not only know MEDDICC, but to bring it into the practice, bring it into the day-to-day, bring it into the way that the team is operating. And I'll go to David to begin with.
So the way we're operating, if I think about what we're ultimately trying to accomplish here, we have a company that has survived the early stages of being a startup and really gotten to a place of like solid footing. And we're now in a position to scale and grow. So one of the reasons why the assignment for me personally was so exciting was just what it represented. It was a chance to come in and help with our founder, help with our company to scale this business and take it wherever it's going to go next. And so part of that was taking a look at processes, and part of that was taking a look at the actual controls that were or were not in place, and some of the personnel and people and things that we were doing. We use tools that you would expect. We use things like Gong and Zoom Info and a lot of other really popular tools for our teams. We also use Salesforce. And although Salesforce is fantastic, and I know a lot of people use it, sometimes it can be overkill too, or even overwhelming, especially for a small company. And I don't mean that as a shot at Salesforce. Mark and team are great. They've got a great platform and a great background. But for us, it was kind of an environment where people just were kind of all over the place. And so we set about kind of building a sales culture and building a culture of accountability. And it started with basics. It started with, a proper sales forecasting process. And it started with a regular cadence and a regular set of QBRs and things that you do when you run a business. And inside of Salesforce, it really was difficult because we hadn't really done a good job of defining things. We hadn't really clearly articulated what, let's say, a stage 1 means versus a stage, let's call it 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever you have. Maybe in Cisco, you probably have 10, or maybe you have, I don't know, whatever. I remember at SAP, we had like 12 stages. I'm like, there can't be 12 stages, but whatever it is, there's lots of stages. But we had to kind of make sure everybody universally understood what they meant. And the problem was, maybe you said this, Jessica, like a lot of different definitions from different people as to how they interpreted things. With MEDDPICC and with adopting that, this was really the cherry on top for us once we got all of our controls in place and we knew what we wanted to do. We kind of redefined some things. We wanted to then be able to give our teams and our leadership teams tools they could use to actually help get alignment between the reality of where projects were and deals were and where we were reporting them to be in the system of record, which was Salesforce. There was a gap there. It was a big gap there. And so to that end, that was a big part of what we were trying to do initially and start out with. And as I mentioned before, it turned out to be something that kind of ran wild throughout the organization once people realized what the framework could do for them. And we're now seeing adoption in all parts of the business.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And then you already made the reference to Jessica there for a second. So I'm very keen to get her thoughts on this too. So anything with relation to empowering the team from a resources and a systems perspective to accelerate adoption and operationalization, difficult word, right? Of MEDDPICC into the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So David made a lot of great points. We do not have 12 stages at Cisco. We do actually try to keep that minimal, but thinking with the end in mind, right? Why adopt MEDDICC? And for us, it was forecast accuracy, pipeline health, deal health, increasing AOV, making sure that we're speaking that common language. There's a lot of movement at Cisco. Our tagline is one company, many careers. And so it's very likely for our sellers to move into the field or to move into the field into other business areas like our acquisitions, like Pim, Meraki, Duo, App Dynamics, and everybody's kind of still operating a little bit differently. And so we really want to ensure that when they move throughout the company, the language is the same, the expectations are the same, the way that they forecast is the same. Right now, and of course, Salesforce, yes, we use it. It can be a beast. I technically sit on the digital sales effectiveness team. Even though I lead content, most people assume I'm in marketing. I'm not actually in marketing. And so the purpose of our team is really to make our sellers more efficient. And by leveraging technology, we want to put more time back into their day, right? What can we take out that's manual? What can we automate? How do we eliminate the clicks? And that's really our ultimate goal. And so if you think about all of the technology, the Zoom Info, SFDC, outreach for sales engagement, all of the tools have to speak to each other. How do we take all of those tools to help them forecast, help them take notes, help them have better conversations around their deals? And how can we make that as easy as possible? Nobody wants to learn one more tool, right? That's one more thing that can feel like a burden when you're talking to a seller that already has a billion things on their plate on top of a huge quota that they have to close, right, at the end of every quarter. And so really for us, it was getting the frontline leaders and director level and above bought into the idea of why MEDDPICC is important, starting at the top and working our way down, because we know that everything that we're going to be rolling out in terms of training and enablement, it's going to live and breathe or live and die with the frontline leaders. If they are not incorporating it into every conversation, every QBR, QBO, every team meeting, anything they do, right, it's going to die and it's not going to seem important. It's not going to seem like a priority. And so we have to ensure that we're enabling our leaders first and foremost to have the tools and the resources necessary to feel confident in their approach, to feel confident in what we're asking them to do so that they can confidently go to their teams to lead them. And in some cases say, you know what, let me ping Pim because I don't have the answer to that. Or let's pull Pim into a deal review and let's see where we can find some gaps so that we can figure out how to close those and move forward. I mean, our tools, of course, are supposed to enable our sellers. We want to make sure that everybody's moving from stage to stage by answering the same or similar exit criteria questions, right? All of that's important. But again, it has to start with the frontline leaders because they're really the ones that are going to spread the knowledge and the wealth of information that we're giving them in order to help their team succeed. So for us, it's top-down adoption for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was so much interesting things in what you said there that I did make a few quick notes there, Jessica. And I think the first thing to sort of say here is that when you look at what David and Numerated have done, it's like the cross-functional deployment from the get-go, right? Which they are very well set up to do. They're empowered to do that because of where they are as a business. I think what's interesting for what you have done, and I know that what Patrick and the team has done at Crowdstrike as well, is utilizing the leadership team as a force multiplier, because that is what it really can be, right? It can set the right environment, the right culture, the right cadences for MEDDPICC as a framework to really thrive, right? And so with that, I want to go into a next question. I'm going to direct this to Pat, because when we think about this stage and sort of getting it from the place where it's like starting to it being adopted and for people to buy into it, and we even seen it come up in the chat like, hey, there needs to be like a clear what's in it for me and a bunch of other things. Like, Pat, I'm super curious about your ideas around the things that we need to ensure in order that in order to make sure that we don't fall into certain pitfall or challenges if you see them typically coming up with things like this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we took a similar top-down approach to Jessica. And I think the really important thing when we're thinking about rolling out any initiative is you need that buy-in and you need champions, and it has to start at the top and then work its way to the bottom. And I think what you need to do in order to get that buy-in and get that alignment from the top down is you really need to identify what the problem statement is and what you're solving for, and provide a solid why around why you're changing. And furthermore, why MEDDPICC as the solution to those changes. So the approach that we took, it started with, it was a data-driven approach, but we leveraged quantitative and qualitative data. So we started by looking at what our current state was and just trying to do some analysis around what does it look like for slipped deals? What's our forecast accuracy at? What are some trends along conversions via stage, for instance, and just try to find out what the data is telling us. And from there, we leveraged some of that qualitative measurement that we talked about too, and what we were hearing in deal reviews, what we were seeing in forecast calls, and just was that reinforcing some of those patterns in the data that we did see. And so just really shining a light on some of the negative consequences that we were kind of experiencing and how that was affecting key sales metrics, and then how MEDDPICC and doubling down in it and revisiting it can really drive some of those improvements and outcomes. And I think that was kind of crucial to building groundswell. In terms of avoiding the pitfalls around MEDDPICC, or when it comes to MEDDPICC, I think one of the biggest pitfalls, or it's really more the challenge, at least that we were facing, is how do you continue to evolve and move up that adoption cycle and scale, so that you're continually honing your skills and embedding it in what you're doing. And there's almost like 3 stages of MEDDPICC adoption. There's the first stage, which is just general comprehension of the acronym and each element and conceptually how to leverage it, like within deals. I would say stage 2 is really leveraging MEDDPICC as a checklist. So maybe it's a field in Salesforce, maybe it's in like a deal review sheet or a win-loss review sheet where you're kind of in a retrospect going back and filling it out. And it's really more like an inspection field that reps are filling out as they go through their opportunity, because they know that their leaders need it. And then there's stage 3, which is it's second nature. It's fully embedded into our methodology, into our sales process. It's instinctual for our reps. Reps are able to self-assess their own deals. I think you can drag a team and an organization kicking and screaming from stage 1 to stage 2, with a stick. I think the biggest challenge is moving from stage 2 to stage 3. So how do you get reps and leaders past just leveraging it as that box checking activity to genuinely use it as the compass heading for their deals, where it's setting the direction for what you do next and where you're weak? So I think overcoming that hurdle, that MEDDPICC and good MEDDPICC execution isn't just knowing what each element and component is. It's not just hygiene. It's strategically how you leverage it at all times during your deals and customer engagements. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, Pat. And actually, I will refer back to something that has been brought up a couple of times now, because if anything, this should be empowering to the team, right? Whether it's from a leadership perspective, an individual contributor's perspective, anyone involved in the team. And so I think Jessica said it, like, this needs to further up and enhance the efficiency in which people work. So basically focus on the right things in the right deals and make sure that you take the actionable items that help you progress your deals, right, and become more efficient as a result. And so, David, if we look at your organization and sort of the buy-in, right, because you're asking your team to do something, get on and get behind an initiative, really double down on it. What have you seen as a challenge, and how did you go about solving for that challenge when it ultimately is about the goal for it to be adopted?
Well, you know what, and you hear a lot today, and you've seen it for a long time. It's been a trend in management, theory and books, and lots of people coming out about habits and habit forming. We all have heard the numbers and the data and 3 weeks to form a habit and all these great things. Forming that habit though is a big part of it. With systems and processes like this, at least what I've learned in my experience is that and I think you characterize it beautifully, Patrick, about making it the compass heading. I think was the word you used, which I love. I love the way you said that. To get to that state where it's the compass heading for the organization, you obviously have to build the habit. The only way to do that is you have to continually reinforce it. You have to drive it from the top. It has to matter to you. I mean, if you're a leader, so I have, even from our board on down, I have them now talking in terms of the status of a deal as it relates to the different steps within the MEDDICC process. Now, to be fair, my entire board is not 100% all the time doing it with me, but they get it and they understand where we're going. And it's starting to creep into the regular conversations now. And so much so that that's filtered into the different department heads and the groups that run different parts of our business, as I mentioned earlier, including product. So now I have product people thinking about, is this whatever it is that we're working on or building, or this customer request, or is it actually going to be in support of whatever those key metrics are that we put out there for our clients, that are their North Star, things of that nature. And then do the salespeople believe that? Does the marketing team believe that? So we've had to kind of build that habit up. It starts with me. I drive it down. It's in every meeting. It's in every QBR. It's in every MBR. We do monthlies. We do it during our forecast calls. And so the challenge has been for those that resist, or those that don't quite understand it, or those that just, maybe they're just their personality. They just don't want to be told how to do things. By the way, we don't tell anybody. It's used as a tool to liberate, right? If you understand what it is and what it does for you, it liberates you. If you're smart and you'll see that, you'll go, wow, you know what? This is a great tool. I wish I had this earlier in my career. This has helped me say no to a lot of things that are wasting a lot of time and get me to the things that are going to be most productive and beneficial to myself, the organization, my clients. So we work really hard with those. I'd call it 20% that maybe resist, whether it's passive or outwardly, they tend to resist. But it starts with the top. That's how we overcome those challenges, specific to your point. And I'll give you one more quick anecdote. Because of the really unique situation in this particular company, Numerated, where we had this meteoric rise, sales came easy. I mean, a lot of the legacy team, it doesn't take away from their skill sets or their value or their qualification of what they did. But when the phone's ringing and the inbound request is coming and you're selecting the deals you're going to close, that's very different than when you got to go out there and go get it done and make a living selling, like the way we all grew up doing it. So that cultural shift was really interesting, and that forced the issue where we really wanted to adopt something like MEDDPICC, because for those that made the turn and made the journey with us and said, no, I am a professional sales executive. I embrace my craft. I believe in my career path. This is what I'm meant to do. They are happy to have the tool, and they're happy to use the tool, because now that it's selling again and not order taking, that's a very different motion. These tools are helping them make a difference and get right back to the same levels of productivity that they had. Challenges come when they don't adopt it. It's about 20% of the team, roughly, when I look across the board, that are not every day, all day thinking about it using the acronyms. But by and large, that's what we do, and that's how we address it. And quite frankly, a lot of it is self-awareness and asking teams themselves to reflect on this and decide, is this what you want to be doing? Is this the career path you chose? Is this really what you're all about? And if so, if you're going to be a professional doing this, and it is a very serious career path, then you're investing in yourself. We're providing that platform for you, and we're happy to be right there with you as part of the journey. So I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And I think something that you were touching upon came up in a couple of sessions and panels even before MEDDICON, right? It's almost like whether it's the phase that you're in as a company, so what you're alluding to, or like the timing and the circumstances in the market will ultimately determine what it takes for a seller to be successful, right? And everyone here, everyone involved in this event and taking part today wants to be able to perform at the best of their ability, right? And right now, that sometimes means you have to get access to that economic buyer. So everything that Dick Dunkel was talking about, approvals now typically go quicker to a CFO than they used to go before, right? Even if it's like relatively small investment. So it becomes about making sure that CFO doesn't become a CFNO, or maybe they are by definition, right, and become the CFGO. And the only way that you can do that is by making sure that there's a very clear, sound understanding about what value are we delivering, what stakeholders are we working with, and what process do we need to follow in order to secure all that. So definitely a very colorful and valuable example there, David. I think to round this very powerful panel session up, I'm gonna insert one more question for all of you to answer, and that is what advice you would give to someone who is at very much day zero of this journey. So they're thinking about empowering their go-to-market team with MEDDPICC. They're yet to start. There's no heritage, right? What is like the one piece of advice that you will give them? I'll start with you, Jessica.
Well, we were just there 3 months ago. So I still very much feel like we're in it. We just launched on March 1st to our frontline leaders globally. So we are in the thick of it. I'm sure we're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, and hopefully we'll be able to use those to help somebody else. If anybody's open for discussion later, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. But I would say, to David's point and to Patrick's point, it has to start from the top down. You have to find your internal champions. You have to find, the change makers and the people who are open to doing things differently and to realizing that the way we used to do things is not the way we can move forward and find success. I'll pivot a little bit because I've been seeing it in the chat. How do you overcome the resistance, right? And Patrick and I were talking about it before the panel started. And there's a lot of successful salespeople at Cisco. There's a lot of lifetime sellers at Cisco. And I had a former leader, I was in sales previously in my past life, but I had a former leader who always said, sales is a noble profession, right? Because if you do it correctly and you're really trying to solve somebody's problem, make their life easier, grow their business, take out some of their pains, help them get to their child's baseball game at the end of the day by putting more time in, then you've done a good job for that day, right? And so if you lead with that, if you lead with the value and you lead with being problem solvers, MEDDICC makes sense because you're uncovering the value and the information every step of the way. There was another question about how do BDRs go into sales and how can they leverage MEDDICC at that stage. If you're in that BDR, SDR, ADR, all the ADRs, synonyms, acronyms, you're a seller, point blank, period, right? You shouldn't be looking to just change your title because you're already in it. You're qualifying. And if you're qualifying from the very beginning, you're going to be a great seller when you get that title change. And so I think if you can lead with that value to get your internal champions on board, to then infuse this into every part of your business, right? To David's point, if everybody's speaking the same language, that's where you're going to start seeing success and you're going to get that adoption. At the beginning of a process, you talk about a champion, for example. Most sellers would say, especially sellers who don't adopt MEDDPICC, they would say, oh, my champion is this person who answers the phone with me and talks to me for 30 minutes a day or always answers my emails. Well, is that person really a champion or are they just really friendly and they're happy to take your call, right? Are they moving your deal forward? Do they have the ear of somebody who is going to bring the right people to the table? We have to start using the same definitions in order to move the deals along. And I know I just said a lot, but all of that has to start with leadership. It has to start with your internal champions, your internal stakeholders. So if you're thinking about implementing MEDDPICC or MEDDICC or any of those forms and you're at ground zero, find the champions, find the people who are always on board to try something new, to bring positive change, and that can have the ear of everybody else to positively, share the message of why it's important. But it has to start top down.
Yeah, well, Jessica, I'm not gonna lie. There are like 60 things in there that I would want to respond to,
I know,
but
I'm sorry.
we don't have the time, right? One thing I will pick out: BDRs, SDRs, ADRs. Absolutely, first point of contact, typically for a customer, right? Very important to the whole customer life cycle and the experience that our customers will have. So I absolutely agree with you there. Um, we have about a minute or two left, so I'm gonna go to Patrick with his single biggest piece of advice that he would give someone that is yet to start this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I echo all of Jessica's sentiments. Absolute gold. Couldn't agree with them more. I think, my advice would be anchor into the why, build your business case, right? Identify some data around the problem statement and why it's important, and find those concrete examples so that you can build the groundswell that you'll need. And I think the operative word, Pim, the question is for someone that's about to start their journey. It is a journey. You're not going to be able to boil the ocean. Find out how you want to stage your rollout and what you want to do to continue the execution across that adoption curve that I talked about earlier. Take a pillared approach. There's education, there's standardization, there's, to your point, Pim, operationalization. Happy I said that right the first time. And then everything's going to fall if there isn't the proper reinforcement. So make sure that those leaders are aligned. The frontline leaders are going to be the most important kind of reinforcement apparatus for you within this. So that would be kind of my advice. Make sure that you're anchoring in the why and the problem statement. Make sure you're speaking about those positive outcomes that MEDDPICC can deliver and drive for the leaders and reps themselves and the business, and just shine a light on that area of opportunity and lean in heavily in those early stages.
Yeah, absolutely. That's gold. I mean, it's very difficult, right, to keep it to one thing, and I completely feel the same because there's just a couple of things that you need to get right. So, massively appreciate that, Patrick, and couldn't agree more. Operationalization is a difficult word. I just roll it out like that because I had to say it like 1,000 times already. Even I'm not a non-native speaker, right? But to finish this round up, we're gonna quickly go over to David and close this part of the event out.
Well, Pim, thank you. And again, it's been a real treat. Jessica, thank you so much. I've just been writing down all kinds of good stuff. And Patrick, I've coined a couple of your phrases. I'll send you the royalties if I ever get credit for repeating some of the great things you said. It's been a treat to learn from you guys. I'd summarize my advice to someone on day zero in 3 ways. Really very quickly, 3 things. Number 1, just start. Number 2, invest in yourself. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a minute. Number 3, keep going. Just start. Invest in yourself in this process and keep going. When I say just start, what I mean is you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay because you're already ahead of where you were yesterday. You've already started. You're down the path. You're already that much better anyway. Just start, get going, adopt it, run with it. Don't look back. When I talk about investing, what I mean is force yourself to study. I had to force myself to stop and watch the videos and really invest hours and hours of doing that. And at first, it was really hard to break away from the cell phone and all the other stuff. By doing so, it reminded me of the pure excitement and joy and the beauty of good selling. It was super important. It kind of re-energized me. And I've been doing this for a really long time. It re-energized everything about this craft. And it allowed me to then really lead. We talked about leadership top down. I couldn't do it if I didn't believe in it myself. So I beg of anybody starting, take the time, watch the videos, dive in, invest in yourself. It will pay big dividends. And the third piece about keep going, what I mean is you have to champion the program. You do. If you're going to run this, if you're going to buy this and license this and do it, you have to champion the program. You have to lead by example. Just remember, all of your colleagues, they're watching your every move. They're hanging on your every word. They watch what shirt you wear. They think about what you say. They really take to heart a lot of the things you do. Your actions speak volumes. Walk the walk, do it, right? Invest, watch the videos, do the thing, lead, champion, run. Don't look back. Just start, invest in yourself in the process, and keep going. That would be my advice for somebody on day zero. Pim, thanks for the opportunity for the last word.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've heard so many good things, right? I made some notes myself to the point that you were making, David, from all of you, really. So just, liberating, by the way, hadn't heard that one before. I agree with you. It is, right? It's about efficiency. It's about empowering teams to focus on the right things in the right deals and become more successful. 80-20 came up quite a bit, building the habit, right? But ultimately, it boils down to doing it consistent and just commit to it, right? And the last thing that kept on coming up in this very session, I think, is like, hey, leadership teams are your force multiplier. You need leaders to lead from the front, whether you're like the biggest company out there, startup, scale up, or anything in between. Leadership is imperative if you want this to be successful, right? If you want this to be adopted into the way the team is going to operate going forward. So with that, like a massive thank you to this panel, right? Jessica, David, Patrick, absolutely loved having you on this stage. I really feel privileged that you all were willing and able to spend some time with us here today. And with that, we're actually going to go on to our next session. And this is a session that we all really want to sit down for. Strap in, because who said that time travel wasn't possible? We're actually going to do it right here at MEDDICON. We're going to go back in time. We're actually going to go to the 60s. I think we all know what's coming up next. It's our Madman live session that Andy talked a little bit about in the beginning. We're not going to do the type of role plays that he was referring to, but we're surely going to have some fun. So going to get ready. See you in a minute.